Hi, I'm Mary.
And I'm Katie, and this is The Housewife Did It.
True Crime Edition.
Yeah. I don't want to say woo for this one, so...
Aww.
Boo.
We do like a... Yeah.
Wah, wah.
One of those, like, where the crowd goes, aww.
Yeah. We will start with our real-time true crime thingies. First, it came out today that a 59-year-old serial killer has been arrested in Long Island.
Lisk.
Huh?
The Lisk.
What does that mean?
Long Island serial killer.
Oh, is that his name?
Yeah, there's a Crime Junkie episode about it.
Yeah, I haven't heard it. More than a decade after 10 bodies had been found along Gilgo Beach. I did see his name, and I didn't write it down because his name is Rex something. I didn't know how to pronounce his last name, and I figure we don't care about him, so. Another interesting thing is Leslie Van Houten, follower of Charles Manson, who was 19 at the time that she was involved in a brutal double homicide in 1969, has now been released on parole. She served 53 years in prison. She is now 73 years old. Leslie Van Houten had, in the past, admitted to the murders of the LaBiancas, the double homicide. She stabbed Rosemary LaBianca over a dozen times. The word war was carved into Rosemary's stomach. I don't know that there's, like, proof of who did the carving.
Yeah.
After the murders, Leslie says that she changed clothes and drank chocolate milk from the couple's fridge. I have seen mixed reviews on the feelings about her being paroled. Like, I get that she was young and vulnerable at the time that she met Charles Manson.
Yeah.
She did serve 5 decades in prison. Like, I get that. However, like, this is an incredibly heinous crime.
Yeah.
And I heard a reporter once say, like, how would you feel if, like, Leslie Van Houten moved in next to you?
Right.
And I just think, like, yeah.
I wouldn't feel good.
All right, so I'm going to get started on our first serial killer episode. We're starting off strong with a female serial killer. So, any thoughts before I start?
No.
Okay. This story starts in Sacramento, California on November 7th, 1988, when a social worker named Judy Moise was concerned enough about the man that she had placed into the care of a boarding house that she reported him missing. Bert Montoya was in his 50s. He had a mental illness and was homeless, often wandering the streets. Judy helped him find housing in a boarding house at 1426 F Street in downtown Sacramento. By November, she had not heard from him in 3 months. Even though the caretaker of the home, Dorothea, assured Judy that Bert was okay, Judy remained persistent and did report him missing. Because this social worker cared enough about this person that so many other people would have forgotten about after housing them, a horrific truth would come to light.
Yeah.
I hadn't quite decided how to tell a serial killer story, because it obviously has to center around the murderer in many ways.
Yeah,
so,
there's a common ground.
Yep. Which is not typically how we tell stories. But in this case, I will have to start from the beginning because I think it gives us the best picture of Dorothea's many, many crimes. She was born in San Bernardino County, California in 1929 as Dorothea Gray. She did have abusive parents and became orphaned as a child. She spent her childhood between orphanages and multiple other homes. In 1948, Dorothea was convicted of forgery and served 4 months in prison. So started off pretty early. After this, she began doing sex work and was arrested again in 1960 for running a brothel. She did 90 days for this charge of being in a house of ill repute.
That's how you know how old she is.
Uh-huh. By the 1960s, she had married 3 times. In 1966, Dorothea was getting divorced from Axel Johansson. In 1966, Dorothea was getting divorced from Axel Johansson, or Johansson, who knows, but had assumed the identity of Sharon Johansson and portrayed herself as a devout Christian woman. As Sharon Johansson, she began running a halfway house called the Samaritan House. Then in 1968, she married her 3rd husband, Roberto Puente, in Mexico City. Roberto was 19 years younger than Dorothea.
Oh, I thought you were going to say 19 years old.
Well, he was 19 years younger than Dorothea, and she would have been about 39 at this time. So, he was about 20. They had a tumultuous relationship full of domestic violence, I think on both ends. This caused the Samaritan House to be shut down. Roberto then moved back to Mexico City following the house shutting down and their divorce. 2 years later, once the marriage had completely failed, Dorothea took over a 3-story, 16-bedroom... So, Dorothea took over a 3-story, 16-bedroom care home at 2100 F Street in Sacramento. So she will, over time, have 2 different houses on F Street.
Okay.
I think something to remember is that these many marriages also provided her with many different names that she could and would use over many years. This new home at 2100 F Street got a really great reputation as a place with no judgment. They served holiday meals to the community. They were well staffed. People felt that Dorothea really treated her tenants well. However, from the perspective of the residents, you were only treated well if you signed over your checks to Dorothea and allowed her to manage your money. If you did not do this, you often lived in the basement with no privacy and no lights. No one could send, I'm guessing no privacy meaning like they were just all down there, like no rooms to divide it. No one could send or receive their own mail to the house. So no one was allowed to send or receive their own mail to the home. She even gave out medications and injections to residents there, as she had convinced a doctor to invite her to be his assistant and was able to convince others around her that she was a nurse. She had fake diplomas and certifications displayed. She became very well liked in the community, even by politicians, because she made frequent donations with, obviously, not her money. The first rumored suspicion of Dorothea Puente, or whatever last name she was using at the time, but I'm going to refer to her as Dorothea Puente, was surrounding someone nicknamed Chief, who she had hired. I'm just telling the story, Mary. I don't know
I'm not saying oi at you.
I don't know for what reason that was his nickname.
I think we all know.
She had hired him as a handyman and says that she adopted him. Okay. Which I can just tell you is like an incredibly inappropriate boundary crossing. As his like staff, essentially. I think that this happened at the 2100 F Street home, but I haven't fully confirmed the timeline of Chief's suspicious incident, but I think that at this point she would have still been at that home. So it is said that she had him digging in the basement of the home as part of his handyman duties, covering it with concrete. She also had him dismantle a garage and fill it with concrete. Shortly after this work was completed, Chief disappeared and was never seen again. Some have shared suspicions that Dorothea had Chief preparing his own burial site.
Do you know his real name?
Mm-mm.
Oh.
I don't. And I actually only heard that story once, but it was just like, that's the first thing people started thinking was weird about her. So I will say, I don't know how, like, historically accurate that is, but it's just like, people noticed this guy that worked for her went missing, essentially. Back a while before. In 1976, she got married for the 4th time to Pedro Montalvo.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're noticing a pattern here.
Yes.
I will say Dorothea Puente is not Latino or Hispanic in any way, but I think that there's maybe a story of like when she was a child and going through like traumatic childhood experiences that like people who were there for her were Latino and Hispanic people.
Yeah.
And so I think
nice.
Yeah, I think that in a nice way, that is just kind of where she identifies.
Who she gravitates toward.
Right. She didn't have parents around, so like maybe these are the people who like raised her. So Pedro Montalvo was originally a tenant at the boarding house.
Once again, she's crossing boundaries.
That's a big one, my friends. He then began working the grounds. He was an incredibly abusive alcoholic, and the marriage was annulled only a few months later. I mention this short marriage mostly just because if you look into this case, you will see Montalvo used as a last name for Dorothea sometimes. So, just want to give you the list of aliases, really. In 1977, a former tenant named Robert Davis was in prison when he realized that he had not been receiving any of his Social Security checks, but that they were being cashed.
Oh.
He reported this, and an investigation began, which I actually am very impressed with, that they even cared that this guy in prison, his money was being stolen.
Yeah.
An investigation found that Dorothea Puente had cashed at least 34 checks that were not hers. She was given probation and
just of his?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
She was given probation and a fine. She had to give up the boarding house and go to therapy.
Oh, no.
Boo. This did hurt Dorothea's reputation as a caretaker.
I imagine it would.
But I will spoil that it did not for long.
Yeah, didn't diminish it.
Nope. She moved to Stockton, where she began trolling bars and forging checks on the regular. In 1979, with no actual credentials, Dorothea became a nurse's aide for elderly patients. A notable patient was Esther Busby. Esther was in her 70s, and that is the cutest name ever. Sweet. After her care with Dorothea began, people started noticing a cycle that she would be very well, and then she would randomly get sick over and over again. She was hospitalized frequently, so the doctor became concerned and reported this to APS, which is Adult Protective Services.
I did not know that existed.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
It is, yeah. It's a little harder to report things to APS than CPS.
Yeah, because nobody knows it exists.
Well, I do. When Dorothea found out about this report, she just started taking Esther to different hospitals when she would get ill. But the doctor from the first hospital had run some blood tests where they found 2 meds that Esther did not have prescription for in her system. Then Dorothea, I don't know where that went, but he found that information, and that's it. Dorothea told Esther's family that she had terminal cancer. So they started sending money to Esther, which, surprise, surprise, Dorothea pocketed for herself.
Right.
She was then fired as a nurse's aide. Esther died about a year later, which she was older, but probably not a coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
The doctors attempted but were unsuccessful in getting the death looked into.
It feels like, in hindsight, like later they could have maybe looked at that.
Yeah. Like maybe exhume.
Yeah, now that we know.
Look into that, please. In 1981, Puente met Ricardo Ordorica. I think I got that. Ricardo Ordorica, who rented her the unfinished second floor apartment at the 1426 F Street house. She babysat the family children, tutored them in English, and became very well loved in that family. When she first asked to rent that unit, he told her, like, oh, it's not even finished. Like, I can't rent you that. And she was like, no, like, I love that street and I love that neighborhood. Like, I will live in it and I will finish it myself. So she did. Eventually, she would take over the house and they would leave, I guess. There are some other reports of Dorothea, obviously, taking advantage of vulnerable people, usually drugging and stealing from them. So I'm going to go through some of those that are not the murders. So Dorothy Gosling recounts that under Dorothea's care, she would pass out and wake up to stolen items. In 1982, Dorothea met, and that's all we know about Dorothy Gosling, I will just say.
Okay.
She just said that like...
That's okay.
And I don't know, like, when they say would pass out and wake up to stolen items, like, I don't know, like, how frequently this happened. Which, of course, like, if she is your nurse's aide, like, it's kind of hard to just be like, you can't be here, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was
Especially
really...
if you're passing out all the time.
Yeah, and, like, you might convince yourself there's a reason you're passing out, you know? Like, you're sick, like, that's why you need help.
Right. It's a cycle.
Yeah. In 1982, Dorothea met Malcolm McKenzie at a bar called Joe's Corner. They went home together, where Malcolm became fully paralyzed from something that he drank or ate, but he was still able to see and know what was going on around him. While he was paralyzed, he watched Dorothea raid his home, steal his things. She even went to the kitchen and used lard to remove Malcolm's ring from his finger while he sat there unable to move. It was hours until whatever he was drugged with wore off, and she was arrested for this crime, but per usual, she found a way out of this. Irene Gregory tells a similar story. When she was 81 years old, she was drugged and unconscious. When she woke up, her rings, money, and medications were missing. Which is, like, kind of answers another question about, like, where is someone who is not actually a medical professional getting all these medications? Like, she's just reusing things that she's stealing.
Yeah, and, like, even if, like, the medications themselves are, like, not dangerous because they're, like, prescriptions, like, they are not safe for everyone, and they're, like, obviously mixed with certain things. They might not be safe.
Yeah, and I'm sure she's using not medical doses.
Yeah.
Also in 1982, Puente met Harold Monroe and his wife Ruth. Ruth and Dorothea became fast friends and even business partners. So Harold was diagnosed with cancer and he was hospitalized for this. His actual cancer. The two women opened a catering business together, and Ruth moved in with Dorothea so that she didn't have to live alone since her husband was in the hospital. And they even opened a joint bank account.
No.
Which,
it was so
if it was
cute,
anyone else, would be so cute.
Yeah. Everything was so cute, and I was like, I was gonna say, like, obviously, this is not a good person. We know that. I'm not saying she's a good person. But even, like, serial killers, like, often have people in their lives that they genuinely care about, and that would, like, never guess that they had, like, this dark side, because, like, one,
yeah,
they might be able to mask it, but two, like, they don't want to kill their friends and their family, maybe. But nope. That's not where it was headed.
No. And I will say, Dorothea Puente does not seem to have any of those people.
No.
Everyone is even, like, disposable for her.
Even, like, the family you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even, like, the family you just mentioned that helped her find this second house, like, while she was doing a lot for them and didn't, like, harm them, it was still, like, for her gain to interact with them.
Yeah. So 2 weeks after moving in with Dorothea, Ruth Monroe would be dead.
Oh.
According to...
Not her husband?
Well, he might die from cancer, but...
I thought it was going to be him.
No.
Okay.
He's nowhere near Dorothea. He's safe in that hospital, man.
Well, I was thinking, like, he might... This is going to sound really bad. He might be the easier target because she has something to pass it off on.
Yeah, he didn't open a joint bank account with her.
No, that's true.
According to Ruth's son, who went and saw her daily, his mother would tell him that Dorothea was fixing her drinks to calm her nerves. She was fixing her specifically creme de menthe. Gross.
What the fuck is that?
It's like a cream mint alcoholic beverage.
Like Rumple Mints and cream?
I have no fucking clue. It's like a minty... I don't know.
Ew.
Her son says that Ruth did not drink, so this was odd to him, but he really wasn't concerned because he thought
he's got a lot going on.
Well, and he thought Dorothea had her best interest at heart. Like, he thought, like, if my mom needs her nerves calmed, Dorothea's there with her. She would know. She's just helping her.
And she's got a lot more to be nervous about these days.
Right. In the last 3 days of her life, Ruth was slowly getting sicker and sicker. On the last day that her son would see her, he found her nearly catatonic, but he recalls basically just sitting there and, like, talking to her when she couldn't respond. And he told her not to worry, that Dorothea would take care of her. And then that day, Ruth died of an overdose from codeine, Tylenol, and tranquilizers. Dorothea reported that Ruth committed suicide. It is important to note that none of those medications were kept in Ruth's bedroom, and Ruth was bedridden at the time. Also in her stomach, no food was found, only creme de menthe. Which is gross.
Yeah, what a horrible thing to find in someone's stomach contents.
Yeah.
I will say, the case I'm doing next week, there could be worse things, I guess, you could find in someone's stomach contents, but how horrifying. Ugh.
And, like, honestly, probably for 2 weeks. Like,
yeah.
Probably she was only consuming codeine, Tylenol, tranquilizers, and alcohol.
Well, and if you think about it, I mean, just going off on a little tangent about creme de menthe now, but I imagine that drink tastes like toothpaste.
Probably.
So if you're plying her with them, she doesn't want to eat. Everything's going to taste bad.
That's true.
Because her mouth tastes like mints.
Also, milky alcohol would make me averse to eating. Anyway.
Yeah. I don't understand how milky alcohol doesn't, like, curdle. I don't know. True. Unrelated. But, yeah, what a bitch.
Dorothea Puente is a monster.
Yeah.
Through and through.
Ugh.
So, after what I think we can all now classify as Ruth's murder, Dorothea drugged Dorothy Osborne. Dorothy Osborne was a smart...
This is not the same Dorothy from before.
No, there's more Dorothys.
Okay. Oh, God.
But, yeah.
Okay.
Dorothy Osborne was a smart woman. After waking up and finding her belongings stolen, just as so many others had, she found that there were still remnants of the drink that Dorothea had made her in her blender. So she took samples of the drink to the police. So they went and they arrested Dorothea Puente as she was about to get on a plane to Mexico.
I love a paranoid ass person who is right. Like you take such a risk, of looking crazy, like bringing a smoothie or a blended drink sample to the police. They're probably like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
And then you're right.
Yep.
In your face.
Dorothea.
Amazing.
So, in August of 1982, Dorothea Montalvo goes to prison for fraud, cashing the checks of tenants, and abusing her position as a caretaker. She faced 5 felony charges. I don't know what all of them are.
Can you be charged with that when you're not a legitimate certified caretaker?
I don't know, because, she wasn't supposed to have a boarding house. Right, yeah.
Yeah.
It said she faced 5 felony charges, but I don't know what all of them were. She was in prison from 1982 to 1985, when she was paroled and went right back to 1426 F Street. While in prison, though, Dorothea formed a relationship with a pen pal.
No.
His name was Everson Gillmouth, but he was known... No, you're not ready. Oh. He was known by the nickname Gil. Cutie.
Now cute? Okay.
Yeah, now he's
so
cute.
Gil. Everson Gil.
Cute.
Yeah, I like him.
Gil was 77 years old and a retired wood carver.
Oh.
I know. I want to say that at this time, Dorothea's in her 50s. She's not old.
No.
I just want everyone to know this.
Yeah. Okay. I think people think she's really old because of the pictures.
Because that was her goal.
But I also think that we need to recognize that the women on Golden Girls were in their 50s. And they do not look like 50-year-olds look now. Or they were in their 50s or 60s, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe. But our mom is in her 50s. She does not look like a Golden Girl. No. Not in the slightest. No. And so, yeah. It was a different time, I guess.
Yeah. Dorothea also did it on purpose.
She's a scammer. She's a scammer.
Yeah. So he was 77 years old and a retired wood carver, which just makes him even cuter. When Dorothea was released from prison, it was Gil who picked her up from prison and took her home, and he planned to marry her. They moved in together.
No.
And lo and behold, opened a joint bank account.
No.
Very shortly after moving in together, Gil went missing. Dorothea even wrote letters to people in his family, telling them how happy they were together, that they were doing so well.
After he went missing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. We don't really know the timeline. He might have gone missing, pretty much immediately. Or we don't really know.
Okay.
She did not sign these letters with her real name, though. But it seemed... The name she signed them with, I've never heard. So, it was it was something random. After Gil disappeared, Dorothea hired a handyman to help around the home, and she gave him as payment what we would later find out is Gil's red Ford pickup truck. She then asked this handyman to build a wooden box that was 6 feet long by 3 feet wide to hold, quote, books and other items.
Nope, that's not what it's for. No one needs to put books in a 6-foot-long box.
No. In 1986, a fisherman found this box in a river and discovered an elderly man's body inside. This body would be identified only as a John Doe for 3 more years. It was not until they started digging bodies out of her backyard that they identified him as Everson Gillmouth. Very sad.
It's also, like, sad because he was a carpenter.
I know.
She put him in a wooden box.
I know, and it doesn't seem like she did that with anyone else, so it's, like, rude. Like, I just don't, like... In the truck thing, I feel like maybe that's because everyone else she killed, like, didn't really have much. Like, didn't have belongings, really, to get rid of. But, like, yeah, it's, like, a very different MO.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. She may have killed him the exact same way, but...
I'm surprised after the chief story that she didn't make him build the box.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was thinking. Well, when I first heard the box thing, and then I saw the woodcarver thing, I was like, no, like, she made him build this box. But then, yeah, it said she hired some new guy. So, interesting. Dorothea Puente continued to run a boarding house out of 1426 F Street, although this was a violation of her parole. She does not seem to raise...
and the fact that she doesn't have any qualifications.
Yeah, I mean...
to run a boarding house.
Murder is probably also a violation of your parole. But,
maybe.
Whatever. She does not seem to raise any suspicions again until November of 1988. As I mentioned earlier, this case is cracked open, all thanks to a concerned social worker, Judy Moise, who cared deeply about the well-being of her clients. I love Judy.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. So, we're going back to where we started at the beginning. Judy helped Bert Montoya get placement into this boarding house, as he was previously living at a detox center, even though he did not have a substance addiction. It was a place he could live, and he said they were nice to him. But she had told him, like, it wasn't necessarily appropriate for him to live around people dealing with their addictions. So she got him into this house. She had heard of this sweet old woman who ran a boarding house, mostly for men in poor health or with mental illnesses. And Dorothea Puente had come recommended by many social workers.
Does that like freak you out?
Mm-hmm.
Like coming from the job you had previously?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean my current job too. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean I will say I don't know if it's like a time period thing, but like we didn't really house people in just like houses run by some like random lady. Like they're like licensed.
That seems crazy to me.
Houses and facilities.
Yeah.
I mean that's not to say that like licensed group home people couldn't get away with this. I mean they're not supervised at all times. But yeah, I mean it's terrifying.
Yeah.
I want to note that at this time, 1988, Dorothea Puente would have been 59 years old. Although she presented as much older, which was purposeful, and she would sometimes lie about her age or her health in an effort to seem less threatening. Like, she told people multiple times she had cancer. As a 59-year-old,
she doesn't seem threatening.
No, yeah. I mean...
That wasn't necessary.
I think, like, being whatever, like, 5'2" or whatever she is...
Yeah.
And 120 pounds and 59, like, you're still pretty fragile.
Yeah. Biggest glasses I've ever seen.
Yeah.
In my life.
Yeah. So...
She looks like Sophia from Golden Girls.
Yeah, she does. A lot. I feel like that has to be who she was based off of. Like, image-wise.
Sophia or Dorothea?
Sophia was based on Dorothea Puente.
At first, I thought you meant that, like, Dorothea Puente watched Golden Girls. She was like, that's who I was to become.
That's me. So, Judy checked in on Bert frequently. She would call the home, or she would just stop by to see him, which I will say is, like, above and beyond. Like, this is... Like, not necessarily, which is probably why all these other people were able to go missing, like, and no one noticed.
Yeah, but that's great.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So, Judy spoke to Dorothea multiple times over the course of these months. Basically,
I bet that drove her nuts.
Dorothea?
Yeah.
Getting those calls?
It shouldn't stop calling me.
Yeah. Judy was basically begging to speak with Bert. Dorothea mentioned to her that she was actually hoping to send Bert to Mexico to spend some time with her brother. I don't know that Dorothea has a brother in Mexico. I feel pretty confident she does not.
Well, I think the other thing is, like, we talked about, she,
boundaries. Especially
with the aliases, she's really trying to, like, present herself
as
Hispanic.
Yeah.
So she's like, I have a brother in Mexico.
I know.
Don't you want to meet him? He's real.
Yeah. Judy told Dorothea that if she did not hear from Bert by the following Monday, she would be calling the police. Because it had been like 3 months at this point. So, when Monday comes around...
Dorothea is shitting a brick.
Dorothea says that Bert is okay and he is in Mexico. Look, I can't produce him. He's in Mexico. I went through with the plan. Don't call the police. He's in Mexico.
They don't have phones in Mexico?
Maybe.
You don't know your brother's phone number?
Yeah.
You can't tell him to have him call?
Another tenant at the boarding house even says that he has seen Bert and that Bert is fine. I will jump ahead that later this tenant slips a note to police and says, she made me lie.
How did you see him in Mexico?
Well, I think he means like before he went. Like within the last 3 months he has seen him. Judy, though, made well on her promise. And she called the police.
Good.
Yes. On November 11th, the police go to 1426 F Street, essentially just for a welfare check. Judy did tell the police, though, that she had seen in the backyard in the past mounds of dirt, which she thought maybe they should look into. Upon arrival, Dorothea... So they walk in the door, and Dorothea says, I'm in violation of my parole. Because I think...
Don't we know it?
Yeah. But I think that the police came, like, with her parole officer. So she, like, looked right at her parole officer and is like, yeah, if you're about to look around this boarding house, you're going to catch me anyway. So, yeah.
Doesn't really matter if you're in violation of your parole. You've committed several crimes.
Yep. So, because she is running a boarding house and occupying a caretaking position, which she is not allowed to do either of.
So crazy.
Dorothea gives them permission to search her home while she's there. They don't have a warrant. She just says, yeah, that's fine.
Unwise.
Throughout the home, the police found many pills, some loose, some in bottles. They found a card with the name Dorothy Miller. When asked about this card, Dorothea tells them it must have been left by a former tenant. The police did not find Bert in the home, obviously. Detective Cabrera, who will be here through the whole case, says that at this time, they thanked Dorothea for letting them look around. He tells her they really just needed to do this so that they could ease the mind of the social worker. And he says, just before leaving, he asks Dorothea one more question. Can we dig in your yard? Although confused, Dorothea does tell police that they can dig in her yard. Which, I will tell you, by the end of this, you're wondering, there's literally no way they weren't going to hit a body.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, when you bury one...
She's giving it up so easily.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm glad.
Sure, right?
Great, but, like, why?
Yeah, and I get it. People think it's, like, so suspicious to say no, and I understand that. But, like, if you bury one body in, like, an acre of land and you want to risk it, fine. Fine. You want to say, yeah, go look, and you just want to, fingers crossed, hope they don't hit that one spot. This is, like, a downtown backyard.
Right.
That we later find several bodies in. Spoiler for everyone.
Yeah.
And you weren't, like, maybe no. I don't want y'all to do that. When
you have a warrant.
Yeah, come back with a warrant.
I feel like it had to be like she thought, if she's like, oh my god, yeah, no problem, then they'd be like, you know what?
Yeah.
If you're so ready to let us...
We're just kidding. We were just testing you.
Yeah, which is never going to happen.
The police also came with shovels. So, like, baby girl, they were serious.
They walk in and she's like, violation of my parole? What are the shovels for?
Also, though, there were 3. I thought this was interesting. There were 3 investigators there to dig. They only brought 2 shovels, so Dorothea gave them one of hers.
God.
Yep. So, they begin digging in a few different spots in the yard when Detective Cabrera started pulling out pieces of cloth and something leather-like. Eventually, with his shovel, he hit what he assumed was a tree root. When he digs further, he pulls out a femur. They discovered a completely skeletonized body, stopped digging, and called the coroner. This was the body of Leona Carpenter, the oldest of Puente's victims, at 78 years old. Well, of her homicide victims. She has other victims of other things. She had been released into Dorothea's care after being released from the hospital. After finding this body, investigators looked up to the house to see Dorothea with a look of shock on her face. She asked Detective Cabrera, "Is that what I think it is?"
Oh my God. That was her plan. She was like, okay, yeah.
I'm just gonna...
in my backyard, I wonder what you'll find.
And I'm gonna be so shocked. Yeah. Please do not mistake our laughing at how ridiculous Dorothea Puente is with laughing at these victims.
Yeah.
This lady...
She's stupid.
Stupid. So, Puente was brought into the station for questioning. The detective does say in the documentary that at this time, or one of the documentaries I watched, that at this time, they really weren't sure she had anything to do with it. They knew that the house had been owned and lived in by many people before her. This was a fully skeletonized body, so, like, it wouldn't have been the body of the person they were there looking for.
Yeah.
And so, he did play...
Wait, so they only dug out that first one, and then they, like, moved on?
Then...
Oh.
Well, then they called the coroner to come look at it, and they went and questioned her, yeah.
Okay.
They probably needed a warrant to do the rest of the yard.
Well, she gave him permission.
That's true. But despite the fact that he says he wasn't necessarily onto her at this point, he did play hardball. He did ask her tough questions. And she did tell lies. One of which was that Puente was her original last name.
Okay.
Which is not true and pretty easy to dispute. She does, in this interview, though, to our point earlier, she, like, sees his name and she's like, "Cabrera, are you Hispanic? Puente."
Mm-hmm.
And they bonded. Or she thinks they did. So.
It's like when my kids are, like, saying something in Spanish. Most of my kids speak Spanish, for reference. And they'll, like, say something like, "Hola."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, understand it. And they're like, "You speak Spanish?" And I'm like, "No."
No!
I don't speak Spanish. I just know some of the words that people use regularly. Like, they're like amigas, and I'm like, we're not talking about friends. We're talking about this unit. And they're like, "Oh, she knows Spanish?"
They're like, "We thought we were speaking a secret language."
Yeah.
So, because of these lies, police decided to dig up the entirety of the yard at 1426 F Street. So,
wait, they knew she was lying because, like, she said that her original last name was Puente?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think there was, like, other sketchy stuff, but that was, like, the most...
like, stuff that they knew was not true.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a specific tenant that lived there at the time, like, currently still living, named John McCulley. And he lived, actually, on the second floor of the home with Dorothea. Mm-hmm. This was noteworthy and may have indicated some sort of special relationship between Dorothea and John. And I don't mean a romantic one, although, like, we don't know. But I really just mean, like, what is the reason that John is a favorite of hers?
Right.
We've heard in the past that, like, you get unfair treatment if you don't sign your money over to her, so we could consider, like, what gets you good treatment. Police had a lot of questions for Dorothea about John. She says that he never had anything to do with these bodies, or this body at the time, it's only one. that he wasn't involved in anything. So, well, also she says she wasn't, so.
But I also wonder, even if he wasn't involved, if she could see them digging up her backyard from her window, was he, like, aware? Did he see her doing it, you know?
Oh, right. See her putting bodies. Yeah.
Yeah. Even if he didn't help her, maybe he knew.
Right. When they returned to dig up the remainder of the yard, John stood outside watching them the entire time. They began to dig up a cement area, and John comes over to Detective Cabrera, and he tells him that Dorothea would like to speak with him inside. So he goes in.
Like, I'm in the middle of something.
Well, he goes inside, where Dorothea tells him that this is causing her a lot of anxiety and she would like to get out of the house.
I'm sure it is.
She said, I would like to leave.
I would like to be excluded from this narrative. Thank you.
Because Dorothea was not under arrest, they could not force her to stay there. But the detective also did not want her to walk out alone, where large crowds had begun to form outside to watch the digging. So, Detective Cabrera chose to escort her across the street to have coffee in a nearby hotel. When he returned...
I was gonna question John a little bit and be like, they're digging in this backyard. They've obviously already dug up one body. They're clearly looking for more. Like, I would not be comfortable just standing there knowing that I'm risking seeing several dead bodies and of people that I've previously lived with.
Right.
But then you say, like, there are all these people in the street watching too, which may not know as much about what's going on. But
yeah, and I think a lot of it was probably, like, news, honestly.
Yeah.
That, like, want to get that footage. Maybe not of the dead bodies, but to say, like, look, there's police here.
Yeah. But it makes me suspicious of John that he's so comfortable standing in the yard watching them dig up dead bodies. And he's like, I'm just going to stay here.
It should.
Just chilling. I'm just vibing.
Yeah. So, when he returned to her yard, a second body was being discovered. Out of that cement spot that he was digging when John interrupted him to go talk to Dorothea. Which indicates to me that Dorothea and or John knew what they were going to find in that spot and wanted to get her out of the house while that was found. So, the second body was that of a female, later discovered to be Dorothy Miller, who that ID had belonged to. She was wrapped in cloth. She was found with traces of flurazepam in her system. Don't really know what that is, but of course, she was not prescribed it.
Right.
And her arms were duct taped around her chest. We know very little about each of Dorothea's victims, but I'm going to provide you what we know as we find their bodies. Dorothy was 64 years old, and she was a veteran. Puente had been using her veteran ID card to receive medical care. The supervising officer asked Detective Cabrera where Dorothea Puente was. And he told him where he had taken her. And the supervisor says, well, she's not there anymore. We checked.
Yeah, no shit.
So, an international manhunt ensues. Because this lady will just beat bop over to Mexico, apparently.
Yeah. She got a brother there.
Yeah. They would find out later that a taxi driver had picked Dorothea up from the hotel, took her to a place to get drinks, and then to Stockton, and then she
said, I need some cream de mints to ease my nerves.
And then Dorothea took a bus to Los Angeles.
Ooh.
Los Angeles.
Superstar.
Yeah. On November 13th, they continue digging, and they find white powder lye. Dorothea either already had told people this, or would later tell people this. I'm not sure. Just everything just said she told people this. Mm-hmm. That she used white powder lye to keep away ants.
Okay.
What we know is that white powder lye would help with the smell of decomposition.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. There are so many easier ways to take care of ants.
Ant spray?
Normal, easier to get a hold of, more likely ways to take care of ants than that.
Mm-hmm. Also, that'd be a lot of... You're telling me your entire yard is infested? Not even, like, around the edges. Why are you
killing the ants outside?
Rude. They're just trying to live.
This is an argument that I get in all the time with 8-year-olds. Mm-hmm. You can't mess with the bugs outside because it's their house.
Rude.
You can, if you want to kill a bug, I just killed a spider in my home because it broke in.
And that is also rude.
I wouldn't go outside and kill a spider because that's their house. Mm-hmm. Why are you getting rid of the ants in your yard?
That day, on November 13th, the third body would be found. This body was very large and was found bundled in 7 to 10 layers of blankets, cloths, a shower curtain, and a tarp that were all sewn together in, like, various ways. Yeah.
She's doing arts and crafts.
Mm-hmm. This body did not seem to have been there as long as the others, and remained mostly intact. There was a plastic garbage bag wrapped around the head of this victim. As the investigators had suspected upon seeing the size of this body and the level of decomposition, it was confirmed that the third body was that of Bert Montoya.
Mm-hmm. How long did it take them to dig up everyone?
So this third body
3 days?
Is found on the third day. Yep. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, I kind of think it's like just 3 or 4 days.
Okay.
Because she's found not like not long after.
Okay.
This is awful to think about, but I want to mention this theory. Mostly, I'm going to mention horrific things because I want us to remember that Dorothea Puente is a horrific human being.
Yeah.
And I do not want that to get lost on female serial killers. So,
yeah.
It is possible that based on the bag over the head, that Bert could have been buried alive but unconscious. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, like, there's not, like, a whole lot of point.
And, I mean, like, how heavily padded he was.
Yeah. I mean, it is possible that she used the bag to kill him, and so she just left it. I mean, but just a thought. After finding the third body in the yard, but having still not found Dorothea Puente, the police arrest John McCulley. They ask... Bold, but I like it. They ask him if he killed anyone, assisted in killing anyone, or knows anything, to which he chuckled and then denied this.
That's not funny, John. Like, I know we're laughing about, like, how stupid
I would not be laughing if I was being accused of murder.
That's not funny, John. Don't laugh.
Yeah. Unfortunately, as we could have told you 30 seconds ago, they did not have enough to pursue charges, so they did have to release him. You cannot arrest someone for watching suspiciously, unfortunately.
I thought you meant watching her bury bodies. I was like, yeah.
No, for watching them dig bodies.
Yeah.
They found...
We're laughing.
Yeah, sad. They found the fourth body, also wrapped in a sheet. This was that of Benjamin Fink, a 55-year-old boarder who struggled with alcoholism. Before disappearing in 1987, Dorothea took Ben upstairs, telling the other boarders that she was just going to make him feel better. His body was found only in a pair of boxers, and He also had traces of fluorazepam in his system. Ben was a former sailor, and it was said that he loved to make people laugh. And I think that's important that we know that. The fifth body was found underneath the patio, wrapped in a bedsheet. This was James Gallop, who was placed into Dorothea's care after having a brain tumor removed. I also want to note...
I can imagine, like, living through all of these things that these people are placed into her care for recovering from. And like, this is who you get stuck with. Yeah,
I know. I do want to note that this is the order to the best of my knowledge, but it could be incorrect. Not all the answers were exactly the same, and there was, like, very little, because some places do it, like, in the order they think they were murdered, some do it in the order that they were found. So I could be wrong, but I think I've got it. I don't know. Yeah. So the sixth body, and these last two, as if they're not awful enough, these last two are the worst. Yeah. The sixth body was Vera Faye Martin. And she is the cutest little old lady that you will ever see.
And she's got a cute name.
Yeah, but she is... I want to pinch her cheeks. She's so cute. She was 64 years old at the time that she died, and the few details that we have are really, really horribly heartbreaking. So bear with me through this. Around Vera's body, there were apparent claw marks in the dirt, indicating that she, more than likely, was buried alive. And her wristwatch was found still ticking when they found her body, which I actually find to be cool. Like, that wristwatch was like, nah. Like, I think... But also, I don't know when these... Like, we don't know when they were killed, so it's like, how long... Yeah. Like, should that indicate to us any sort of timeline? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, because a lot of times you hear, like... Didn't we talk about in... Am I making this up? In Christopher Jenkins that he was wearing a watch that had, like, stopped... No. I'm making that up. Yeah. Okay. But, like, sometimes in, like... I guess because I'm thinking of, like, drowning cases. Like, the watch maybe is an indicator of when they were in the water. So, like, it's... Yeah, like, that the impact of the burial and the weight of it did not affect the watch's ability to work. But then I also think that that has a lot to do with the fact that she was wrapped up. The watch wasn't just, like, hanging out in the dirt.
True, yeah.
But, yeah.
The seventh and last body found was in Puente's front yard, and that was Betty Mae Palmer. In 1986, Dorothea took 77-year-old Betty to a doctor's appointment, and she was never seen again. During the time that she was missing, Dorothea was found in possession of an ID that had her own photo, but Betty Mae Palmer's name. Hers also has some especially horrific details. Betty was found
hands first,
missing her hands, feet, and her head. Later, Detective Cabrera would describe... Oh, what I was going to say was, I think that, with female serial killers, but also in this specific case, like, I thought, like, yeah, she's awful for killing that many people, but, like, she just does it in these, like, non-violent ways, like, just drugs. It's just, like, she lets them just seep into unconsciousness and then whatever. But it's, like, no, like, these are to bury people alive, to put bags over their heads, and to remove their... What are those called?
Limbs. Well, no, not ligaments. Extremities.
Extremities. Yeah. Their head and their extremities, like, that's absurd. And also, like, unnecessary. Like, if this was just necessary to get money, no, like, I don't want to say this, but, like, no, like, joy from killing, which is what we see a lot with serial killers, then she wouldn't need to do this stuff. So it's like she also just wanted to murder people.
Yeah. I think we give female serial killers all the time the benefit of the doubt. and like you hear people say like Eileen Wuornos was like defending herself for the most part, and like I think that I don't know what I'm trying to say. I don't know. Like Eileen Wuornos had a hard life, you know. Dorothea Puente sounds like had a hard life, but I think we also can recognize that like there are male serial killers who have had a hard life, and we're not as quick to be like, well, it was like defense, or whatever. And so I feel like we're quick to give female serial killers the benefit of the doubt, especially in like the knowing the fact that like we know like I'm sorry, we're gonna have to edit this because I can't talk.
It's okay.
When we think about like suicide, like people will tell you like women don't shoot themselves typically. Like they choose, if they are completing suicide, to do it in like a less violent way. And so I think that we just kind of think that of women like easily, like either there was a reason or it wasn't as bad, or as like the details aren't as like horrific as some of the others we've heard, and like that's just not true. Like this woman's like just not only like violently killing people, now we know, but like fully taking advantage of anyone she can.
It like, was every person she encountered, it was a death sentence. Or at least like a theft
and you have to
sentence.
Consider there are 7 people in her yard, but we have not only heard about 7 people dying.
Yep. And I mean, I think we tend to think like men are capable of killing just for killing, and men like are just sick and they're just awful and they just like want to be murderers. And with women, we think like it has to be a reason,
like there's a plan.
There has to be something. And it's like, she did get money out of this. She was stealing, but like she
was also getting money just out of conning.
She was doing just fine stealing without murdering. So all right.
So in conclusion, if you are a woman who wants to commit a crime to get money, let it just be stealing.
Yes, please. If you're anyone who wants to commit a crime, please don't kill someone. So later, Detective Cabrera would describe the basement bedroom as the death room. I don't think that this was found on that first day when they searched the home, but I'm unsure exactly when. I'm guessing it would have been like after a warrant. But he found that when you pulled back the carpet in the basement bedroom, there was actually second carpet underneath it. But there was a strong smell of decomposition and body fluids. Likely this is where she kept deceased bodies until they could be disposed of.
But she would pack so many people down there, they said.
That was in the first house, and I assume that's the same in the second house, but this may have been like a closed off room in the basement.
Okay.
Yeah, but I guess that's what like the second carpet is for, is to like keep the smell from like
I'm just thinking like does she like when she put someone down there, is she like, okay, everybody else, you're moving upstairs for right now.
Get out.
Don't ask me why.
Yeah. So on November 16th, which would have only been 5 days since they started digging, Dorothea Puente was caught and arrested in LA. She had checked into a motel just 1 day after investigators started discovering bodies in her yard. The Sacramento police chief made a statement that although there wasn't originally enough to arrest Dorothea, she was a prime suspect in a homicide case, and she should have been followed by officers when leaving the property. I tend to, like, not get that mad, because I'm like, I mean, she wasn't under arrest. They cannot hold her. Yeah. But
technically, he did follow her. He just left her alone.
But we do know that the police are able to keep people under surveillance, and that should have happened. So she was then transferred back into the custody of the Sacramento police, and specifically placed directly into the hands of Detective Cabrera.
She's like, now I got my shot.
Yeah. Dorothea's trial was held nearly 3 hours outside of Sacramento in Salinas, California, in Monterey County. She was charged with 9 counts of murder for the 7 bodies found on her property and for the deaths of Ruth Monroe and Everson Gillmouth. After deliberating After deliberating for over a month. I can't. I read it like 100 times. I couldn't make sense of it. After deliberating for over a month, she was found guilty of only 3 of the murders. Before I tell you the rest, do you want to take your guess of, like, which 3 and why?
I think maybe the 2 that weren't on the property.
Okay.
And the one that was under the concrete.
Okay.
The reason I think those is because I don't understand how you have 7 bodies buried in the same yard, and you're like, well, they were killed by different people. Mm-hmm. And just like I know, like, they were saying, like, well, the first one's, like, so decomposed, but, like, what are the odds?
Not good. They're not good.
That back-to-back people who lived in that property were murderers and chose to bury the bodies on the property.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'm right, but I would say those because the concrete seems like
maybe her MO.
Different MO, like putting a concrete slab, and the other 2 were not found in the yard.
Yeah.
And that's the only way it could possibly make sense to me.
Yeah. My original thought was, like, it was probably Ruth, Gil, and Bert, because those are the only 3 that we know she had personal connections with, like, personal joint bank accounts and like, true. Things. It was not. It was 3 random bodies in the yard. Let me explain this to you.
I would love to know what I want a videotape of that entire months-long jury deliberation.
I'm going to let you in a little. The jury was deadlocked 11-1 for all of the charges. One person did not want to convict her.
Dumbass. And
the one holdout finally agreed to a conviction of 2 first-degree murder counts and 1 second-degree murder count. He did not care who they were. He just said, I will give you 3, and that is all I will give you.
What is the difference?
I don't know. And I don't know why he decided 2 first degrees and 1 second degree. So
why was he holding out?
I don't know. I do not know. I don't know if he just thinks she's such a cute little old lady that she couldn't have done this. Like, I have no freaking clue.
My case next week has a guy who, like, this same
thing. Like,
one guy is holding out, and he, like, he has the dumbest fucking reason for it.
Yeah. So, the first degree murder...
Okay, can I just say something? I think men who hold out in a jury when the answer is that obvious are, like the worst kind of men.
Little
and
dicks.
Like, I don't just mean that because, like, they're bad people for doing that, but, like, they, like, I feel like they are doing it for attention.
Yeah.
Like they're, like, the male equivalent of a, like, oh, don't make me sing girl. Like, oh, come on. Like,
yeah.
Like, you know, like, when you were in elementary school and, like, somebody would say something, like, so outlandish, and then they'd be like, why is everyone looking at me? Like, that's those kind of people.
Yeah. The first-degree murder charges were for the deaths of Dorothy Miller and Benjamin Fink, and the second-degree murder charge was for that of Leona Carpenter. In all technicality, I don't know that it matters, but I thought that you should know that. The son of Ruth Monroe, he did speak out about this later, and he just said that, like, they did think about appealing and, like, going back to court, but, like, her sentence wasn't going to change.
Yeah.
And so he just felt like, fine. I mean, I'm sure he was disappointed, but...
Yeah. And that's why I don't understand, like, the logic of the guy.
If you truly think she's innocent, why are you sending her to prison anyway?
Right, because the sentence is going to be the same whether it's 1 or 7. And, like, I feel like because they're all in the same yard, or connected to the same person.
Right. If
you say that she probably committed some, then, like, I feel like for Ruth, is that her name?
Ruth Monroe, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like for Ruth's son, it's like, well, if we're all in agreement that she killed these people, then, like, we can all agree that she killed my mother. And
yeah.
I think that's, like, a sense of closure.
Yeah.
So, like, what's the point of...
Yeah. Like, I get for Ruth's son that it's, like, what would be the point of appealing? But I hate that he's the one who had to concede when what's the point for this stupid holdout guy either? Like, it's so silly. And, like, if you truly think this woman is innocent, I'm actually disappointed in you that you didn't stick to your guns.
Yeah.
And, like, what, you just sent her to prison anyway because you were just like, let's get this over with, but I'll only give you 3. And it's like, I just don't get why it matters which degree murder. And when I was looking at what she would actually be convicted of, I did think, like, Ruth Monroe and Everson Gillmouth are the hardest to prosecute because they're not in her yard.
Yeah.
Everson Gillmouth gets a little easy when she sells his truck and makes a box that his body is later found in. Yeah. But, like, I got that. But it's like, you literally were just like, 3 random people can have justice. And the rest of them, fuck them.
Yeah. What a douchebag.
Yeah. Either way, douchebag or not, Dorothea Puente was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. I think that, obviously... we already said this, the 3 out of 9 raises, the verdict raises a lot of questions. Not for us, because I think we know what happened. But I also think that one of my biggest questions in all of this is who helped her with the disposal of these bodies. While she was not as old and fragile as she let on, she still probably could not have dug graves, dug up concrete, carried bodies.
Who's a petite woman.
Especially Bert Montoya, who's a big guy, and buried these large bodies by herself. So,
I don't think it's a question.
Was it John McCulley, or did she have random residents doing this, like, throughout time?
Or maybe...
were they all digging their own graves?
Maybe, or, like, she had, like, Bert help her with one, and then she killed him. And she had someone, and, like, maybe John was next or something. Like, where she's, like, having them help her, and then, because she's gonna kill them anyway.
Yeah. That's what I always think, is, like, do I think John McCulley was involved?
Lulling them.
What?
Yeah. I was gonna say she's, like, lulling them into a false sense of security, like, oh, I know this big secret about her.
Yeah.
But then, she's gonna do it to them, too.
Yeah, and I think, like, I definitely think John McCulley was involved in some way. I just don't know if I believe he was the right-hand man consistently. Like, I feel like it's very possible that she did just, whoever was going to be loyal to her and would do it, she'll let them do it. And honestly, it could be when you start saying, no, I don't want to bury a body, that she's like, you're dead next.
Yeah. Oh, good to know. Like, writes in her notebook.
Let me drug you unconscious, and tomorrow we'll finish that off. While in prison, Dorothea wrote a recipe book titled Cooking with a Serial Killer.
No!
Even though she maintains that she did not kill anyone.
You probably don't know the answer to this. Was this after the, like, law passed that said that convicted murderers can't get royalties off of books?
I don't know. I mean, when I looked up the book, it's not, like, published by her. Like, it's not like, it's like someone else's name, and then it's like Cooking with a Serial Killer recipes by Dorothea Puente. So, like, I don't know that she even did get the royalties. Like, it's possible she just sent out this paper stack of recipes and someone was like, I'll put those in a book. I don't know. So, as I said, she maintains that she did not kill anyone. She says that they died of natural causes.
And she buried him in the backyard?
To which I say, Mr. Holdout Man, do you want to charge her with gross abuse of a corpse?
Yeah.
She did put them there, and it sounds like she's admitting
cut off
that.
Someone's extremities.
Or maybe, Mary, they just fell off, okay? Natural causes. It's all...
That was the natural cause.
It's all natural.
Ugh.
So, a reporter attempted to get an interview with Dorothea on the 20th anniversary of these events. In this interview, she is sticking with her story that she is not guilty. She said, quote, I don't give a shit what anyone else thinks. And she and this reporter met a total of 6 times before Dorothea began asking for gifts, and this is when the visits stop. It's Anna Delvey. It's literally Anna Delvey. They were like, she asked for $115 worth of gifts, so he stopped going.
Good.
In 2011, at the age of 82, she died in prison. Which I just want to make clear to everyone that she was not 80 until 2000. Like, she was not 82 till 2011.
Wow.
Ugh. As for the house on 1426 F Street, it was not torn down, as many homes of serial killers or sites of brutal murders may be. This home is a historic home for the city of Sacramento, and so it is unable to be torn down. Mm-hmm. A couple named Tom and Barbara moved into the home in the 2000s at a very reasonable price, as you might suspect. Tom...
They moved in and lived there?
They live there now. Mm-hmm.
Nope, couldn't be me.
Tom began to embrace the home's past, putting up mannequins of Dorothea, signs about being drugged and buried, signs saying the house is innocent, pictures of hands coming out of the dirt, and other gimmicky things. They do acknowledge that Dorothea was truly evil. Tom does feel that humor could help the situation a little bit, maybe heal some things for people.
I don't personally think it will heal the people who need it.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion.
Yeah. In 2015, they had a tour of the home, but all proceeds went to people experiencing houselessness, suffering with mental illness, and populations that Dorothea would have preyed on throughout her lifetime.
That's nice. I kind of like the idea of saying the house is innocent. Yeah. Because, like, that's true. The house didn't do anything wrong. But then when you put hands coming out of the ground, like, that's fucked up.
Mm-hmm. You're going to have fun.
But the charity thing is nice.
Yeah, you're going to have fun making the YouTube thing.
Oh, cover. I already have a picture of her mannequin saved for it.
The house is crazy. So, you can watch a short 15-minute film called The House is Innocent to see how the home looks today. I thought it was pretty interesting. Yeah. I like Tom and Barbara. They seem nice. But I'm ending on questions about ethics. As we think about things like merch with serial killers' faces on them and the popularization of true crime movies and shows like the actor ones of Jeffrey Dahmer that are not like documentaries, is there a way to do any of these type of things ethically? Because they donated the proceeds, does that make it okay? Is it always in poor taste to use humor related to people's murders? What are your thoughts?
Me personally?
Yeah.
I do think it's in poor taste to use humor to discuss murders. I think if you're using humor to make fun of the perpetrators of murder, okay, because they're dumb. I remember when I watched Dahmer, and it got to the end where they were talking about the Niecy Nash's character wanted like a monument built for the victims where the apartment used to be, and like at the end they were like, that never happened, like what a bummer. And then I was thinking, I was like, okay, cut to what did Ryan Murphy do to honor the victims? Like, if you're gonna make the show and kind of call out the city of Milwaukee for not doing that, then like, but you're making a biopic and profiting off of it, like, what? And he may have, and I just don't know, but like, I think giving money to the families of the victims, giving money to a charity that matches what the victim, like in Jeffrey Dahmer's case, like giving money to like the Trevor Project or something. I think that would be ideal, especially because we know, like I just mentioned earlier, there's a law that protects families of victims in the sense that if a murderer writes a book or anyway produces media, the royalties automatically go to the families of their victims. Yeah. I think, and I've like thought about this with our podcast specifically. I think that I personally, when I'm like picking cases, I try to specifically pick cases that I know the families of victims have willingly spoken about. If that makes sense. Like the one I'm going to do next week, there's a 6-part Netflix docuseries on it, and they interview the victim's family and loved ones in every episode. So like I know that they are open to discussing what happened and using it to educate and like improve things in the future. But we talked about this earlier, I also know that the daughter of Betty Ferreira from the thing about Pam has like openly said that she does not in any way approve of that show because it makes light of her mother's murder. So like I don't think I would ever cover that case because I want to be like sensitive to.
But I also think I don't know that her problem is that the case was covered. I think it's like how it was covered.
Because it's also on Dateline, which they interview family members. But yeah, I think that humor is always a bad idea. I also think that with serial killers, sometimes we can like lose sight of the victims and think that like this is like a pop culture thing, or like that these are like characters, and ultimately they're not. But yeah, I think that there's like a fine line of ethics with true crime. Yeah. And I think that we are new to it and trying to figure it out. Yeah. But I also think that like there's some places that make more humor of it than others. Yeah. And I think the donating to charity is great, but I don't think it excuses the signs, the mockery of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and you should look at some of them because some of them, it's like, you're like, oh, I get it. That is, like, it is funny what you're trying to do. Like, I get the joke. And then it's like, ooh, those were, like, real people in the ground.
It's like, it's not a haunted house.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I'm thinking of, like, that house that's owned Sarah Winchester. Her family owned the Winchester Rifle Company, or her husband's family did. And she had like a vision one day. Somebody who was like, your family has like contributed to the deaths of so many people through these rifles, which like, what a progressive ghost, because like this was a very long time ago. And they told her that if she wanted to live and not meet the same fate as those people, that she had to build onto her house continuously. She could not stop renovating her home. And so the house is like absolutely batshit crazy. Like there are like stairways that lead to nowhere. There's like there's one stairway that you open the door and it's like a three floors up, and it opens to outside with like no ledge. And so like I think that like that house in and of itself is so riddled with like potential to be gimmicky. Yeah. And like it, like obviously this woman was like mentally ill, and like tormented by this vision she had. But she wasn't like a serial killer. She wasn't murdered. She died of old age, you know. And so like to make fun of that home, it can be funny.
Yeah.
Because it's a funny looking house. But like making fun of people being buried alive in the backyard of the boarding home that they had to get through like government, like
through social
housing
services.
aid, like is not. It's not funny.
Yeah, I think my thoughts specifically on this house, I don't think they have bad intentions. Like if you watch them in the short film, but I think like something that I discovered in this case is that we know virtually nothing about these victims. Yeah. Which happens a lot with serial killers. Because we get so into, like, talking about how much someone has done, how many murders they've committed, how many times they've done this, the pattern, that we forget about each person that was lost. Right. And so I think, sure, if the city of Sacramento will not let you tear down this house, it's got to stay. No one's going to want, like, people aren't just going to want to live in it. Like,
well, some people do, apparently.
But that aren't interested in true crime or that aren't interested in making it gimmicky. People aren't just going to want to live in it and have everyone, like, pretend it's not that house. So, like, sure. But then I think what you could do if you want to have a tour is, like, put information about those victims throughout the house. Or honor a museum or whatever. But, like, the thing is that, like, Dorothea Puente deserves no more of mannequins of her. No more of, like, pictures of her looking like a cute little old lady in her red coat and her glasses. She deserves none of that. And so I do think, like, in this situation where the house does have to stay and you have to do something with it, you could make it where people can learn about the people who were killed in it, and you could still do annual tours where the like, proceeds go to a charity.
Yeah, you can also like use it for something else. Like for my bachelorette trip, we took a tour of the old city jail, which like is again different because it wasn't like, I mean, it was home to people who committed crimes, but because they were in jail. But they told us on the tour that at one point it had been used as like office space. At one point it had been used as a daycare. Like they had, before they like just kind of left it alone and started doing ghost tours in it, like they had like used it for other things. And I think that like, yeah, if you can't tear it down, fine, but like there's different things you could do with it.
And I think people might disagree with me on this, but like I even think put up a plaque that says like in memory of these victims. Make it a boarding house. Make it a licensed, fully staffed, well taken care of boarding house.
Because the house is innocent.
Right, where people can actually just go and like get the care that these people were supposed to be getting, but that they can like see who is supposed to be there. And so
well, like what they did with like I mean they did tear it down, but like what they put up in place of Georgia Tan's orphanage. It became like a leadership academy. Yeah, I think true crime is really hard as a genre because like you want to be like respectful. And but like you said, when the serial killers and the body count gets higher and higher and higher, like it does diminish a lot of times the victims into what specifics happened to them. But also a lot of their families make their own websites where you can like learn about them as a person, and their families will do interviews and talk about them and stuff. So like there is ways that they can learn more about her victims and hopefully not put plastic hands in the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sucks because it was a while ago, but
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
Yeah. It was a little rough.
All
right, well, we've ended heavy enough.
Yeah.
So, my main sources were an episode of World's Most Evil Killers, Murders at the Boarding House, an episode of Worst Roommate Ever, and then I will put the rest in the show notes. All right. See ya next time.
Yeah.
Mary's turn.
Yes.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.